was telling the folks I always envisioned MB.HAYNES just being this giant building that had spools of copper and that sort of thing with a line of trucks in the back. I had no idea you were a whole mountainside. Nor did I realize that you were 100% employee owned. What an accomplishment. Give yourselves a big round of applause for being shareholders. Nor did I realize you're 651 people strong. I did realize that MB.HAYNES is an institution. I mentioned that to your company's leadership a while ago because it seems like wherever I go in Western North Carolina, I run into people that say they either work for or have worked for MB.HAYNES at some point or another. You might know my background is I used to work for McDonald's Corporation. I built about 100 McDonald's restaurants, and it seems like there were MB.HAYNES trucks on the parking lot of every single one of those construction sites. So I am quite familiar with the things, with many of the things that you do. I'm also unbelievably impressed that you have your own apprenticeship program for about 8 different certifications here. What a remarkable achievement that is. There are a couple things I think you might have some interest in, but just in case I miss something, why don't 2 or 3 of you raise your hands and tell me what you'd like for me to speak on in the 15 or 20 minutes that I've got. First hand, what are you interested to hear about? All right, I'm gonna have to make it up as I go if you don't tell me what's on your mind. There's a lot in the news. There's a lot going on in Washington, D.C. Good or bad? What interests you now?
We talked about the tariffs earlier. I think that's
Okay. We can certainly touch on tariffs. Anything else?
Getting interest rates dropped.
Interest rate drops. I can talk about that. All right. That's enough to get started with. I can fill up all kinds of times with just these things. First of all, let me just tell you how envious I am that you're 100% owned by the people in this room and the other folks that are out there. You know, I'm also a business owner. I'm a small business owner, and my wife and I own McDonald's restaurants. And we've always said, we've been in business now 27 years. We have always said that you just cannot replace the presence of the owner. And as an example, I could show up in one of my restaurants and do nothing other than sit in the corner with a cup of coffee and a newspaper, and things are going way better than if I weren't there. And there's no amount of money that you can spend to replace the presence of the owner. And how awesome it is that on every single job site where MB.HAYNES operates, the owner is present. I know that causes folks to take more pride in everything that they do, to represent the company in a much, much stronger way. And that every hour that clicks by, you know that you own a little bit more of the company and that you're creating more of a secure future for yourself and your family. What a remarkable, remarkable position that you're in. And I know that so many other companies have to be envious as well. You get the benefit on so many different levels from being owners in the company. Some of the things that folks are typically interested in Western North Carolina involves hurricane recovery. Before I tell you some of the things that me and my team are still working on, let me applaud you and let me thank you. Because I've heard many of the stories of how you came to work on September the 27th and every day afterwards with a whole new perspective. Many of you had devastation yourself. All of you were probably out of power. All of you were probably without communication. But I've heard how you bound together and looked out for one another. I've heard how many of you reached out into other communities in Western North Carolina, looking out for your neighbors, making sure that they were safe, that they were cared for, that they had the supplies that they need. And I think that's a real illustration to the pride and the compassion and the power of the employees at MB Haynes. And I want you to know I really appreciate all of you in participating on that level, because we know, and I admit that the response initially from the federal government was not what we would have wanted. In fact, I had an opportunity to visit, to fly on Air Force One with the president. His first flight after being sworn in on January the 20th was here to Western North Carolina. And on Air Force One, President Trump asked me, he said, "Chuck, what am I going to find when I get to Western North Carolina?" I said, "Mr. President, you're going to see a group of folks that are unbelievably frustrated with their federal government, because we went through on September 27th the worst natural disaster in the history of Western North Carolina. And folks were really frustrated with the response from the federal government. But what you're also going to see is a group of strong, resilient mountain people that are living their life the American way and have pulled together. And you're going to see people that have been neighbors looking out for neighbors. And were it not for that, we would be in a far different position today. And you were certainly a part of that. And I ask you to give yourselves a big round of applause and to accept my thanks. And that's the thing. You deserve a big round of applause. We still got a long way to go in Western North Carolina. You know that I helped write a bill that we passed on December 20th last year that allocated $110 billion to natural disaster relief recovery. And a good portion of that is directed to Western North Carolina. The frustration that I have, the frustration that many of you may experience, is so much of that money is still hung up in federal agencies. And me and my team are working to jog that loose out of federal agencies into the hands of the people here in Western North Carolina that still need it. Those agencies are USDA, Department of Transportation, HUD, and FEMA, and many others. In addition to the fact that there are still some things that the administration can do to help us rebuild here in Western North Carolina. You know, if you drive through Western North Carolina, you can see a lot of areas that you wouldn't think anything ever happened. It just looks so normal. But you also see a lot of areas that are still devastated. We have a lot of small businesses that still aren't reopened. We have a lot of homes where the owners are trying to figure out what is their next step. Their home is still not inhabitable. They're arguing with insurance companies. They're arguing with FEMA. But the administration can do some things. And so I've been pushing back hard. I've been advocating on your behalf. In fact, me and a couple of my team members met with the vice president I think about 3 weeks ago now, and gave him a good list of things that we still need here in Western North Carolina. And he promised that if I were to go do a couple of other things and get some background, that he and I would go meet personally with the president in the Oval Office so that I can continue to advocate for you. And so that's largely where we're at in the recovery right now. I would say to you that if you're still having trouble with FEMA, or if you know somebody that's still having trouble with FEMA, and they're out there. In fact, I was up in Avery and Mitchell County yesterday, and we ran across a handful of folks that are still having trouble. Call me. The number is really easy to remember. It's 223-FIX-FEMA. 223-FIX-FEMA. And me and my team have had a lot of success and have learned that a well-placed call to FEMA from the Congressman will actually get some attention, and we can often help folks. And so if you or somebody else are still having trouble like that, then let us know. How many of you are interested in paying more federal income taxes? Raise your hand if you'd like to pay more federal income taxes. That's kind of the response that I thought that I would get. You've heard a lot of talk about H.R. 1. It's the big bill that Congress passed just before we began our August work session. You know, some folks call it a recess session. My staff knows that if they use the word recess, they are fired. We are not on recess. We're working every single day back here in the district. I'm traveling a little bit around the world with some of the responsibilities that I have on various committees. But one of the big things that we did before we adjourned for the work session is we prevented the largest tax increase in American history from going into place. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 was set to expire at the end of this year. Most families would have received a 22% tax increase, which totaled about $4.6 trillion over the next decade on the backs of American families. And so we not only avoided that, which works out to be, I'm going to round it off to about $2,000 per year per family, making about $46,000 a year. So not only are you not going to pay, if you fall into that category, $2,000 more in taxes, we did some things to really support the American worker. How many of you ever work overtime? Raise your hand if you ever work overtime. Raise it high. I want to see how many people do. Okay, so many of you. Well, you realize that one of the things in that bill is we eliminated federal tax on overtime, effective not today, not last week, but the 1st of 2025. And so the first $12,500 of overtime will not be taxed on a federal basis. That's something that helps, not the ultra wealthy that people want to make you believe that this bill helps, but it actually helps the American worker. It helps probably half the folks in this room that raised your hands. How many of you have ever waited tables? Raise your hand. All right. Raise it high. Don't be shy. Okay, keep your hands up. Now, how many of you know somebody or have a family member that have waited tables? Raise your hands. Almost every single person in this room. Well, you know that those are not billionaires. You realize those are just people like us, just folks that get up and go to work every single day. Well, there's, as a result of this bill, there's also no federal tax on tips. First $25,000 of tips will not be taxed. Not beginning today, not beginning last week, but beginning the first of this year. It's retroactive. How many of you know somebody that you would put in the category of a senior citizen? I mean, nobody here would be, but how many of you know a senior citizen? Raise your hand high. All right, well, the bill that we passed affects senior citizens. They're able to write off an additional $6,000 every year. Those are not billionaires typically. How many of the senior citizens do you know that are that you raised your hands for a while ago are billionaires? How many? Who's got a grandma in here that's a billionaire? Yeah, that's what I thought. Mine was not either. And so this tax provision isn't for billionaires. This tax provision is for real, solid American people. Folks that have worked all their life, that are probably now receiving Social Security, and they get to write off $6,000 additional dollars of their income before they pay taxes. And so there's a lot of mismessaging out there about what we did. Those are the key things about this bill that I think would interest you. Let me touch on tariffs real quick. It sounds like, from my conversation with your leadership, that most of the purchases for your goods and materials are U.S. made, and I applaud you for buying in America, and especially for regenerating the economy here locally. The issue of tariffs is one that I do hear frequently from businesses in western North Carolina. There are some businesses that are affected quite severely here initially from the use of tariffs. There are some advantages already that we've seen from the president's use of tariffs. But before I get into that, let me qualify this. I had rather it be the decision of Congress to impose tariffs, not any one individual, no matter what party that they might be a part of. And the U.S. Constitution gives that authority to Congress to levy those fees abroad. Unfortunately, Congresses of the past, on 6 different occasions, have given up that authority to the administration. And that's particularly frustrating to me. And there's almost no circumstance now where Congress can reclaim that authority and overrule any decision on international trade that comes from the White House. And I think that's unbelievably unfortunate. A lesson that I'm taking to Washington, D.C. that makes me question any decision that we make in the future, whether or not we're giving up additional congressional authority. If we're a body governing the people of the people, then the power should be in Congress. I think you elected me. I think the people of Western North Carolina elected me because I'm one of the people. And I think it should be our collective decision, not the decision of any one person. But unfortunately, we're where we're at today. The best thing that you could do for me is if you know somebody that's affected by tariffs, then I'd like to hear about that. We have some companies in Western North Carolina that are very adversely affected. We have some companies, we have some places that are winning because of tariffs. In fact, we have a company further west. We have a company from China that is totally relocating its operation now from China to Western North Carolina, to Graham County, one of the poorest counties in the state, as a result of tariffs. They're going to hire over 500 people, making $46,000 a year, and I think that's the textbook example. That's what we're looking for. I also think that if you watch the news closely, you'll see there's some experimentation going on out there right now between the White House and foreign governments on how we can better leverage America's economic might to pull more jobs back here and create a better future for all of our families. The last thing on my list that I heard a while ago is where are we going with interest rates? I wish I had a crystal ball. I'd be out buying stocks and bonds based off of that. No, I didn't say that. I can't do that from Congress. So I wish I had a crystal ball now. I can't tell you where interest rates are going. I can tell you that it's really a mixed bag. We want lower interest rates so that we're all paying less on our credit cards and our car loans and our mortgages. But to get lower interest rates, we have to have an economy that's not working. That's the way that the Federal Reserve regulates the strength of the dollar and inflation. And so while we all would like to pay less on our car loans, we ultimately need a weak economy to be able to do that. But we've had the benefit over the last year or so of a stronger economy, and that's why you've seen interest rates flat. I was watching the news this morning, and there's some predictions that maybe in the next couple of months, the Fed may begin to lower the rates maybe by a quarter. Don't go buy bonds based on that, but that's what I heard reported on the news. So it's a mixed bag. There's some pluses for higher interest rates. There's some pluses. That means that we've got an economy that needs to be cooled down. Plus for lower interest rates are we pay less, but we're also a part of an economy that needs to be supercharged. with that, let me see if there's a couple questions in the crowd. I'll take those.
We have about 3 more minutes.
Okay.